Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to a new series that we're starting today. It's the London system from White's perspective. This London system I've been asked now many times to do on my YouTube chess channel, and I've decided finally to start it. And with this London system, if you handle it very well, I think you can have on my YouTube chess channel the whole repertoire for yourself, because if you are familiar with my YouTube chess channel, I've created this King's Indian and Nimzo Indian defense series in which I show you nice opening preparation against the d4, and also this hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense series in which I show you a nice and effective way how to play against e4. So I think with the London system you can handle your whole opening repertoire and really have a good preparation for every situation that can happen to you. And if you're also familiar with my YouTube chess channel, I've created this Basics in Chess series, in which I've created more than 160 videos about opening strategies, middle game strategies, and end game strategies. So I think my goal is, when I finish the London system, is achieved, that you have really everything combined here, and you can really start to learn. Because my goal is to create a full series, and it will be called Become a Master in 1 year. So you will have like more than 300 videos to follow. All of course for free, nothing charged. That's also my goal on my YouTube chess channel. So you can have middle game preparation, end game preparation, opening preparation, and also opening preparation. Really, these setups that you should be familiar in particular openings, and that's why I decided to start this London system. And I've been asked now many times, as I said, to do this London. Okay, it's a great opening, but in some occasions I've also warned you that your opponent could have a great preparation with the move c5 and queen to b6. So we'll come, of course, also to that point. Today we'll do only this introduction. I think my introduction videos are also very important in this series, because we cannot just study this London system from, I don't know, from a let's play the London system against the Benoni setup. So it's very important to realize the common ideas. That's what we'll do in this video, the common ideas about the London system. And I've sorted, I think, the most important one for you out. First of all, we should realize that the London system is a setup opening. So if we watch now this setup by White, most of the times we want to achieve this. We want to play d4, so bishop to f4, knight to f3, then knight from b to d2, bishop to d3, e3, and then castle. So this is the setup of the London. So we'll start from the beginning and we'll see what will happen. But this is so far our setup. And the good thing about the London system, that most of the times you can play the setup against any opening, against maybe the Queen's Indian, the Bogo Indian, I don't know, maybe against the Nimzo Indian, maybe even against the King's Indian. So you can play your normal c3, e3, d4, bishop to f4, knight to f3, knight to d2, bishop to d3 setup. The idea about the London system is that it's easy to memorize, but also there is always this relation between bishops and pawns. I've explained that in many of my analyzed games, but also in many of my Basics in Chess strategy videos. So we should always be familiar with this relation between bishops and pawns. It means that, you see, when we watch, for instance, this structure in the center, I hope you don't mind that I will analyze this a little bit deeper. I really want you to have a good preparation. So if we watch this pawn structure, it's a static pawn structure. So it means not so many things can happen in the center. There are, of course, clear targets for White. White is trying to coordinate the attack around the square e5. Black, for instance, will try maybe to coordinate the attack around the square e4. So that are the squares that we should search for outposts. But there is always, as I said, this relation between bishops and pawns. And if we value, for instance, this bishop, which is really our best minor piece, you see we have many pawns or dark squares. So that's why we should favorize our light square bishop. On the other hand, our dark square bishop, that's the good part of the London system, has also a great activity. And in most of the times you see that black will try maybe to get rid of our very annoying bishop on f4. And you shouldn't be worried about this continuation. If bishop to d6 and maybe we take out the bishop on d6, it's not a problem, because we still have this relation between bishops and pawns. Our light square bishop is perfectly fine because it's not blocked out by its own pawn. So even if black goes into your trades of bishops, still black is continuing the game with a bad bishop on c8. So that's why this London system is very messed up for black to play against. It's really a positional setup of black. Black needs to be patient in order to make something happen. And I've heard many times that grandmasters say it's lazy. The London system is for lazy people. But okay, we'll leave it like this. It's very important here that white can go into the setup, and that, as I said, it's easy to memorize. And I think for beginners, it's also a great opening because you don't have to study in the beginning so many opening theories, so many lines. Basically, what you should be familiar with are some great attacking possibilities. So what I've also sorted out here is this attack built around this e5 square. So it means when we have, for instance, this position, we'll, as I said, make many sidelines. For instance, the London against the Benoni, the London against, I don't know, the Perts, the London against other setups. But for instance, in this position, as we said, we should search outposts here on e5 because that's the weak square in black's position. So most of the times our goal is simply the attack built around this fixed e5 square. So it means that black will never be able to make progress here with the move e5. So black cannot proceed here with the potential e5 pawn breakthrough. So that's why we call that square, it's a fixed one. So now after the potential knight to e5, we could maneuver the queen, queen to f3, queen to h3. And you see now this bishop and the queen are building really a powerful attack. So that's what I meant, this simple attack built around this e5, this fixed e5 square. So also what we should notice is this bad bishop position. That's what I said in the beginning. Sometimes in the London system, we can play simply against the bad piece on the c8. So sometimes you see that this bishop will be simply too blocked out by its own pawn. For instance, like this position where it is blocked out by its pawn on e6. So that's why I think one of the main strategies can be also to play the bad bishop position. So what is good about the London system, what I've also written here, is this fast development. So it means that you played basically with all of your pieces once. You haven't lost any tempos. You can still castle. You can still make good progress. You're not vulnerable to your opponent's fast counterattacks. Only in this c5 queen to b6 setups, that's I think the toughest one to handle for white if black goes into aggressive line. And but as I said, fast development here is present, and I think a very good thing of in the London system. So this is one thing that I used to call it in the London system. It's a so-called provocative bishop and this attacking bishop. We should really call them like this because the bishop on f4, it's okay, it's an attacking piece, but it's a provocative bishop because sometimes you see some occasions that maybe black will try h6 g5. So this bishop is a provocative because maybe we don't want to trade off our good bishop from black's perspective, because in some occasions black doesn't want to trade off his good bishop because this bishop could still maybe go on this diagonal. So sometimes we can at least provoke some kind of a weakness here if our opponent plays h6, or maybe our opponent plays g6, or removes the knight in order to play maybe an e5 pawn breakthrough in order to crack the position. As I said, maybe black really wants to crack the e5 square. Then you see if the knight leaves the defense, then the bishop has made its point. At least we have provoked some more weaknesses. So that's why I like to call it in the London system the provocative bishop. But this one we call the attacking bishop. If the knight gets somewhere, then we could maybe even have some, for instance, knight to d7, then maybe some Greek gift tactics. Of course, not in this position, but in some occasions, some tactics work with bishop takes h7 and then knight to g5, queen to h5. So some kind of an attack. So as I said, this is how I call these two bishops, the provocative bishop and the attacking bishop. So king in the center positions, that's what I meant about when we sometimes... Oh, I got a call. I'm not going to answer that. Probably my wife calling. So when we have these types of positions, we can notice that the king is so far not endangered. So sometimes, in some occasions, we could stay with our king in the center. So it's perfectly fine to stay here because the center is not immediately attacked. So I think this is the most important stuff to really realize in the London system. And now let's see a couple of examples. The first game that I wanted to show you, it's one of my games. I usually don't play the London system, but I tried it out in order to make this series. So d4, d5, now knight to f3. This is the setup. We have knight to f6 and bishop to f4. Here after e6, we built our normal setup with the move e3. Again, you see we have a great control of the e5 square. So that's what I meant. The attack built around the e5. We have bishop to e7, knight to d2. So we don't lose tempos, but still we're controlling now the e4 square. We don't want our opponent to jump on e4 because that's the square that he is aiming, and that's why we should have it immediately protected. So castling c3, we're building our attack. So c5, bishop to d3. If your opponent pushes the pawn on c4, it's not a problem. He can have his fun on the queen side, but now the position is really static, and now we could search for e4 pawn breakthroughs. We could really make them maybe e5 pawn breakthroughs, then deflect the knight from the defense. Again, the clear target would be the weak pawn on h7. So the game, my opponent tried knight to c6, so c still healthy development, castling, and now b6, trying to develop the life square bishop here to d7, or in some occasions bishop to b7, queen to c8, then bishop to a6, which could be also an idea to get rid of this very annoying bishop on d3. So here, knight to e5, that's what I meant. An attack simply built around the e5 square. So if knight takes e5, d takes e5, then we have accomplished again some ideas. After the move knight to d7, deflecting the knight, we could have again queen to f3, queen to h3 again. So in the game, my opponent tried bishop to b7. I tried queen to f3 because, first of all, I want to have a further control after potential knight to... let's go back here. After the move queen to f3, if our opponent tries knight to e5, then d takes e5, you see he cannot place the knight on e4, where it's 3 times attacked, and that's why queen to f3 also very important setup move. We're building our attack again. In the game, c takes d4 was played, and now it's very important to capture with the e pawn, not with the c pawn in this types of, if your opponent challenges you, because we don't want to, first of all, invite this knight into the game, but also we don't want to open the c file. So black could make progress here on the queen side, but at least we should stop his attack at least a little bit with the move e takes d4. Now our pawn structure on the queen side is still fixed. Still, we have a great control on the e4, but now here you see now this dangerous attack, this dangerous setup in the game. Bishop to d6 was played, and now rook from a to b1. Simply, as I said, around the e5 square. That's the most important square that we are protecting. Our attack is simply built around that square. Rook to c8, and now queen to h3. That's now our goal. We have here the monstrous attack against this weak h7. Again, we want somehow to deflect the knight from f6, then deliver checkmate on h7. Even g4, g5 is a possibility to get this goal, because, as I said, it's not a problem here to weaken the pawn structure in front of the king, because the center is static. Our opponent cannot play counterattacks in the center. He cannot attack us. So that's why it's very important to realize that. So even g4, h4 ideas are possible in the London system when we have such a fixed position in the center around, again, the e5 square. So h6, here my opponent tried to block, of course, the h7. He doesn't want to have this threat on h7, but here I decided to sacrifice the bishop. So you see how London can be really messy after g takes h6, queen to h6. Here, knight to e4, knight takes e4, and here after f5, I simply played the rook lift, and basically the game was over because rook to g3 is a serious threat, and it was game over. So let's see now another example. It was a game played by Magnus Carlsen. Again, the same setup, d4, d5, knight to f3, bishop to f4, knight to f6 in between. Okay, 6, a3, bishop to d6. Here, black wants to challenge this provocative bishop. And here, again, we shouldn't mind, we shouldn't be troubled by this idea of blacks. We can play bishop to g3, because after potential bishop takes g3 and h takes g3, the position opens again for our light square bishop. Again, the target is h7, but now black is continuing the game with a bad bishop. So that's what I meant. Even if black goes after the bishop, still it's a weird one to play, because I'm not sure how to develop this light square bishop, where to develop it. still we can play on our normal ideas, bishop to d3 and simple attack against the h7. So as I said, here bishop to g3, c5, c3, still we're building our setup. Knight to c6, knight to d2, bishop takes g3, h takes g3, and queen to d6. Here you see black played a solid game. Here black tried really the e5 pawn breakthrough. He so far hasn't made a mistake, but that's what I meant. Bishop to b5, very important positional move. Now we don't want to build anymore this bishop to d3 attack, because e5 would be really a dangerous move by black. But as I said, our whole attack is built around the e5. We're protecting further the e5 square. So now you see the knight is protecting the e5, so we played sort of a positional pin. And that's what I meant. I've mentioned it in the beginning. We have the bad bishop position. Now we can even trade off our bishop for a knight, but still black is continuing the game with the bad bishop. So bishop to d7, bishop takes c6, not a problem. We're giving up the bishop for a knight, but now again knight to e5. Queen to c7, queen to f3. Again, the queen sneaks into the position. We have h6, queen to f4, queen to e7. We have g4. You see, you shouldn't be troubled. You should really push as soon as possible. Immediately the g4 move. Here we have knight to h7, and now queen to g3. We have rook to g8, and now castling is a possibility. So you see now, again, we have a fixed position around the e5 square with potential f4. If f6 happens, then you see, because black has already weakened the pawn structure here with the h6, it's not such a powerful idea, as we have still this square for the knight, the square g6. Again, I'm pointing you out that this bishop on c6, it's a bad one. Even if it moves here to b5, still we can get out of this light squares. And one of the best ways to proceed against the bishop is to get out of the range. So you see, now the bishop is aiming into nothing. It's not such a powerful bishop. The bishop loves to attack pawns, to attack pieces. Now, after the move bishop to b5, it's again aiming into air, into nothing. So knight to f6 was played in the game. Here Magnus Carlsen proceeded with rook to c1, rook to c8, and now c4. Because black didn't castle, that was Magnus Carlsen good idea. Now it's time to open the position. So although we play most of the times a positional setup in London, whenever you see that your opponent cannot castle, it's a normal idea to simply open the position. And now knight to c4 comes into the game. We have a new clear target. It's the weak square on d6. So king to e7, b4, deflecting the queen. But now knight to d3 comes with the tempo. We have knight to e4, knight takes b4, knight to g3, but now h takes g3. We could have maybe even taken with check and then take the knight. Here in the game, f takes g3 was played, and now bishop to b5, rook to f7 played by Magnus Carlsen. Great attack, and now the fork, knight to d6 again around this knight to a7, bishop to a4, knight to d3, and it was game over in this position. Black resigns. So you see many variations, but it's a similar setup, similar attack. Please notice, after trades of bishop on d6, then it's time to chase the knight on c6, which controls the e5. We should build around our attack around the e5 square. Although there are many sidelines that black can play. As I said, black can play the Benoni, the King's Indian setup, the Tarash setup, Nimzo Indian setup, many setups black can play. But our setup is, as I said, simply built around this e5. So I think in the continuation we'll start. Now this was this introduction. I hope you enjoyed now this introduction video. As I said, we'll study the London hard. Then you can have a great preparation. Also with my other series, the King's Indian, the Nimzo Indian, and this hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian. So you can build your whole repertoire on my YouTube chess channel. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want to see this other opening preparations that I've created for you, here are the links: the Nimzo Indian, the King's Indian, and the hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense series. Check it out. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best of